Good morning. Buenos días. We have quite frankly, we have a very long agenda. We've got any number of speakers that'll be joining us here this morning. Some have come a long way, all the way from Colorado, to be with us here. We've got faculty, we've got staff, and so it behooves me to get the agenda going. I will be honest with you, I have written 3 set of comments for this morning, all of which have been edited out. I know you're happy. Aren't you happy? Yes. So my remarks have been shortened a great deal, and it's completely my fault, because I started thinking about what presentations we would have this morning. I kept running into ideas and people that I wanted to invite to be with us this morning. Folks that I think have a story to tell, have information to share, and that will enlighten you. But I will also say to you, I'm going to first start by introducing a very, very special student that I just met a few weeks ago. When I met her, I heard her sing a song early in the morning at 7:30 in the morning, and I will admit to you, I thought she had an angelic voice. And my immediate thought was, as I was standing there listening, how can I introduce her to you, the Student Affairs team? I heard her and I was in tears just because of the beauty and the lyric. She sang a song that I thought was just marvelous. So I'm thrilled to introduce you to Monica Valdez, a third-year Warren student from Pueblo, Colorado, who is studying psychology and neuroscience. I've had the pleasure of having lunch with her, and let me say to you, she has audacious dreams and aspirations. And I have absolutely zero doubt she will achieve those dreams. Monica works on campus with the Triton Mobility Services and serves on the 2016-17 Wellness Cluster Student Advisory Board for the Warren College. Monica is very active. She's a member of the Sigma Kappa sorority and participates in Hermanas Unidas, a Latina social organization, and a member of the Global Ambassador Program, and is a member of the Board of Out-of-State Students. Monica started singing when she was just 5 years old, and her kindergarten teacher asked her to perform in the elementary school talent show, and she fell in love with music. Monica has performed at various fairs and entered competitions around Colorado, and in 2013 she was named the best high school national anthem singer in the state of Colorado. Woo! So, as you know and I know, we're blessed by having very bright, talented, hardworking students. She is one of those. I couldn't wait to introduce you to her. This morning, Monica will be performing the Tim McGraw song entitled Humble and Proud. I love the lyrics of this song, and they are truly aspirational words to live by. And now, the fabulous, renowned, first time you'll ever hear her, Monica Valdez. You'll remember this day.
Hi everyone, thank you so much, and also thank you to Dr. Gonzalez for that introduction. I hope you like the song.
You know there's a light that glows by the front door.
Was I right? Give her one more round of applause. Thank you, Monica. This was not planned, but on this election day, given what we've been living through as a nation, are there better words there than those? Are there? I wish the entire nation had just heard that rendition and had heard Monica, and we could all live by those very, very simple words. I thought of a joke earlier today, and I tested it out with Sean, so Sean laughed. So blame him. I said to him, I'll be so glad when I'm watching TV and all those prescription commercials come back. Because what I've been hearing on the commercials just is not humble and kind. I'll use that as a segue. It worked, Sean. I think it worked. I'll use that as a segue to introduce, it's a great pleasure to introduce to you one of our guest faculty that will be speaking to you, Dr. Thad Kouser. He is the department chair and professor of political science here at UCSD. He studies American state and national politics, government reform, direct democracy, interest group influence, and how politicians use social media. Dr. Kouser has authored several books, and his work has been published in journals such as American Political Science Review, Political Analysis, and State Political and Policy Quarterly. Dr. Kouser is the recipient of the UCSD Academic Senate Distinguished Teaching Award, Faculty Member of the Year, and serves as co-editor of the journal Legislative Studies Quarterly, and has worked as a staff assistant in the California, New Mexico, and the United States Senates. He is renowned, and we are fortunate to have him. Probably the best things I can say to you is that he is a kids soccer coach, a prolific and occasional water polo player, an awkward surfer. This is what's written, I didn't write this. And an overly competitive triathlete. Please give him a great round of applause. Welcome, Dr. Kouser.
For having me.
Show and tell, baby.
All right. Well, good morning. Thanks so much for the invitation and introduction, Juan. And thanks so much to all of you for sitting through one more hour of elections in an election year that just about all of America is ready to end. How many people here, November 9th can't come soon enough for you? Well, sorry, you've got one more day to get through. This is a day for political junkies like me and all of your students on campus who are political junkies. For me, this is the Super Bowl. So this is going to be, it can't last long enough, right, if you're in my field. And importantly, it can't last long enough for so many UCSD students who have been putting their sweat and tears into this election. So students have been walking precincts all across the state, or all across the city. I've been getting calls from student volunteers working on local campaigns. You know, your Tritons who you work with are very engaged in this election. We think of ourselves as something of an apolitical campus, but if you look at the people who are staff to the city leaders in San Diego, there are a lot of our recent alums there. Communications director to Governor Jerry Brown is a UCSD alum. Communications director to the Speaker of the California Assembly, an alum from about 3 or 4 years ago. So students are very engaged, and tonight, if you show up at the Great Hall at Eleanor Roosevelt College, we'll have, just as we've had the last 2 election nights, we'll have 300 to 400 students who've already RSVP'd. This is from 2012, but there's going to be a free election night party with free pizza, with the election returns on a big screen TV, with a moderated discussion run by our Ombudsman Center, with student body president, with the editor-in-chief of The Guardian. So you're going to see the incredible excitement about this election that's been happening on campus. But there hasn't been all excitement and positivity all across the nation. So this is where we are right now in American politics. I can't tell you who the next president will be, but that next president will either be the most unpopular major party nominee for president in history, or the second most unpopular major party nominee in history, right? Either Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. And so what a lot of people have been asking is, how did we get here? Right? How do we get to these two people who have such high unfavorability ratings? How are these our only two choices? So what I want to help do in our conversation today is talk about understanding the system and how we got here, and show you a bit of data. This is all going to be, the data in the first part is all going to be borrowed from my colleague Gary Jacobson, who collects all the polls. And so we're going to talk about how we got to these two candidates and why we can't get anything better in American politics, and whether this is the new normal. Then I want to talk for a while about what political scientists are starting to reflect on. So for political scientists, it's kind of been the best of times and the worst of times. Right? It's been the best of times because never have so many people been interested, curious, and asking my advice about an election. But it's the worst of times because never has my expert advice been so consistently wrong. Right? You've seen political experts and pundits. We didn't think Donald Trump was going to get through, year after, and everything we thought we knew about politics has been turned on its head. So now, those of us who write about this, those of us who author textbooks, who try to teach undergraduates about this, who just talk to our neighbors about this, trying to figure out what went wrong, what parts of the conventional wisdom about politics need to be overturned, and then what parts actually might be right. So I'll talk about that in the second part. And the third thing I want to do is just share a little bit of some of the research that's going on at UCSD, give you a sense of the flavor of the kind of research that professors do working with graduate students and teams of undergraduate students. And we often work across disciplinary lines, across departments, to try to decode the hidden meaning in the patterns we see in especially the data about this election. So we'll give you that flavor of UCSD research. So let's start with how we got here. And the easy answer is kind of the data that any of you who have been junkies on 538.com or Real Clear Politics or any of the sites that bring together lots of polls have been showing you. So every dot on this is a poll looking at support. The blue dots are support for Hillary Clinton. The red dots are support for Donald Trump. And this starts over a year ago in May of 2015, really when Donald Trump got into this race and shook up American politics. And you see, this astonishing rise for someone who early on had very small levels of support to someone who was getting close to 50% of the country, and still now is doing quite well. And if we zoom in, it looks like there are just sort of ebbs and flows that look a bit random here. But if you zoom into what's been happening during the course of this campaign, since Americans have started to really focus it after the end of the summer, after we got to the political conventions, you see a lot of logic, right? This is following fairly sensible patterns. So Donald Trump, the first line is a Republican convention. He got a big bump leading into and just after the Republican convention. That was a source of political success. And then Hillary Clinton got just the same kind of bump. If you look at her line, it spikes up just as much during the Democratic convention. 5-point bumps for both of them. That's normal American politics, right? What's been new about this campaign is that we've seen really Hillary Clinton being quite stable since that period, right? Since voters started really paying attention to this race, her support has been stable, and really the trends in this campaign have been independent voters deciding, oh, they're okay with Donald Trump. No, they're not okay with Donald Trump. Oh, they're okay with Donald Trump. Oh, they're not okay with Donald Trump. So you've seen rises and falls in Donald Trump's popularity based on things like the Access Hollywood videotape and other issues coming to light in his personal life, his performance in debates where he lost these 3 debates by a bigger margin. Hillary Clinton, who was always looked at as one of the worst debaters, worst public speakers in American political life, won these 3 debates by a larger margin, according to all scientific polls, than any other presidential candidate since we've been polling debates. So did better than her husband Bill, did better than Barack Obama, the great orator. So she did very well in those debates. He had some falls in those debates, but really the election, voters have come back home to their party's traditional candidates towards the end. And we have a fairly close election where Hillary Clinton's carrying about a 3.5 point lead into this election day. So if the polls are right, she should eke out not a landslide, but a fairly solid victory. And if the polls are wrong, the question is, how wrong are they? And can they be wrong enough for Donald Trump to pull off the biggest upset in American politics, an upset that if you started in May of 2015, no one, including all the political science establishment, would have predicted, right? So what does this tell us? What can we look through a little bit more deeply in these polls? What does this tell us about how the Republican Party got to a nominee who's been so controversial? Well, this is the spaghetti graph of support. You can't see it at the bottom. Support for all the Republican candidates. So you see Donald Trump in red. You see Ted Cruz in blue. You see John Kasich in green. Those are the last 3 surviving candidates. There was a big and deep Republican field of governors and senators from major states. But until Donald Trump took over this race, the leading candidate, the one in orange, the one who was doing the best throughout this year, was other, right? People were looking for something else, someone other than the political establishment. So the Republican Party, even though this was by any objective measure the best Republican field, they were looking for someone else to turn to. Right? And part of the explanation of why we got Donald Trump was he was the most other candidate we've seen in American politics in recent years. So he satisfied a real thirst to turn away from the establishment. If you look at Hillary Clinton, right, she had this inevitable nomination where she had an enormous lead, such an enormous lead that Joe Biden, the sitting vice president, never got into the race. And Martin O'Malley, a fairly popular governor from Maryland, gets out quickly. But really, Bernie Sanders, I think he was the other candidate. He was the protest vote. There was a lot about him personally that appealed to every one of our students, right? On every laptop, you saw a Feel the Burn sticker, right? No Hillary supporters here. So the Democrats, too, were looking for someone different and didn't get that. But I think that is also why Hillary Clinton has not sort of sealed the deal and gathered all the Democratic support, because there was this thirst for someone so different that people were willing to turn to an elderly Vermont socialist, right? So I think that shows that in the Democratic side, there was also thirst for something different. If you look at what people think about both of these candidates, there's astonishing astonishing level of dissatisfaction with both of these candidates. So if you look on the corruptness scale, Hillary Clinton beats Donald Trump by a small amount in the percentage of people who think that she's corrupt. He beats her on racism and crazy. And they're tied in the not honest and trustworthy competition. And, he beats her on not qualified, unfavorable opinion, not the right temperament, and not prepared. And one of these people will be our next president, right? So how did we get here? Well, a big part of this is where we are in American politics today. We have become more and more polarized over the last generation. And the best measure of this, no matter who we elect as president, half the country loves them and half the country hates them by the time we get to election day. That started early with Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, but it's no different from where the last few races have ended up. So what I'm going to show you the next thing is a timeline that Gary Jacobson gathered of the difference between what the president's own party thinks about him, it's always been a him, we'll see about that tomorrow, and what the other party thinks. And so that gap is the lever of polarization in how we view our presidents. In the Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon eras, that gap was pretty large, about 40%. More Republicans liked their president than Democrats and vice versa. But really things started to skyrocket with Ronald Reagan, right? He becomes the polarizing figure that takes us up to about a 60% split, and that remains constant. Goes down with George H.W. Bush during the first Iraq War, right? There's always a rally around the flag. Goes back up with Bill Clinton. Goes down during 9/11. The country comes together. And since 9/11, we've just pulled further and further apart. George Bush became the most polarizing president in American history, and then Barack Obama beat that, right? So even Barack Obama, someone who started his political life talking about how we're not a red and blue nation, we're a purple nation, we all worship the same awesome God, that he has become a polarizing figure, and we shouldn't be surprised that Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are just as polarizing. In fact, there's actually an important way in which they're less polarizing than some of those past presidents. So normally what we get to is a time in politics at the end of a campaign where every Democrat loves the Democrat and hates the Republican, and vice versa. What we've got to right now is that every Democrat hates Donald Trump, but a lot of Democrats don't like Hillary Clinton. And we have the same thing for Republicans and Donald Trump. And part of that is because they're actually two of the more moderate candidates if you look at their policy issues, which no one has in this election because they've refused to talk about them. But if you look at their policy issues on foreign policy, Hillary Clinton's a very Republican-ish leader, and Donald Trump on many social issues has many positions that Democratic and labor groups have pushed. So because of that, they've lost some of the wings of their party and lost support in their party, and this shows how Clinton and Trump voters think of them. So Hillary Clinton's voters, 71.8% of the people disagree that she's corrupt, but 12.1% of Hillary voters say that she's corrupt. 8.9% of Hillary voters say that she's crazy, right? Which is below Donald Trump, what Donald Trump supporters, right? 15% of Donald Trump supporters say, yep, he's corrupt and I'm voting for him. 12% say, yes, he's crazy, right? So we've gotten to a point now that not only do we not like the other party's candidates, we don't like our own party's candidates. But part of this, and so the question is it the candidates or is it the election process itself? The last few stats in this part that I'm going to leave you with argue that it's the process of going through an election, right? That is the thing that's damaging to people's reputations and what everyone thinks about them, you know? So I might seem like a nice guy given the introduction that Juan gave to me, but if you spent $500 million running negative attack ads and had every news source in the country looking for dirt on me, my popularity would go down just like Hillary Clinton's did over the course of this campaign. So this is her popularity among Democrats, Republicans, and moderates. And you look at it in January of 2012, she was quite popular. It was that exposure to the campaign. It's all we do to tear apart our leaders that makes them unpopular. And if you looked at where these candidates were, in 2013, Hillary Clinton was very popular, right? Majority of Americans loved her, only 26% had an unfavorable rating. Even Donald Trump, only 37% had an unfavorable opinion of him back when he was a reality show star who every so often voiced his opinion on politics. So it's not the players, it's the game. It's the system of our campaigns that tears people down, and we shouldn't hold it against these presidential candidates that they are so remarkably unpopular. We should think about the system and what's going on. So let's talk about that system. Let's talk about the process of a campaign, and let's talk about everything that I thought I knew about a campaign when I was an expert. So I had this great opportunity to be a Fulbright scholar in Australia and go around to all these Australian universities giving talks like this about the American presidency. And I always had this slide where I'm going to show you a picture of the next president, and I'd show it, and it was a picture of everyone running. But I left out Donald Trump. Right? He was an afterthought. No one thought he was going to win. And his route to victory in the primary overturned some of the longest held pieces of conventional wisdom about American politics. So I'm going to tell you 4 things that we thought we knew about politics that were overturned in the primary, but may actually be true in the general election. So we're going to see whether I need to tear up the textbook that we write. Right? The first one is GOTV is key. GOTV means get out the vote. And it's all the people who are knocking on doors, who are calling people, and this is Ted Cruz, quite the gentleman, working on behalf of Donald Trump. And this GOTV, Donald Trump had none of in the primary. Right? He didn't have people on the ground in Iowa and New Hampshire. He hardly had any organization. And we all thought, right, because we've done all these scientific experiments and know that you can increase turnout by 1 to 2 percentage points by knocking on people's doors and dragging them to the poll, we all thought this mattered and this would cripple his candidacy. But he didn't need it because he got people genuinely excited about turning out. And in fact, when we had the guy who was the director of field operations for the Clinton campaign in 2012, he came and gave a lecture here at UCSD, a guest lecture, and course that Nathan Fletcher, a professor of practice, teaches about how to win or lose a campaign. And I talked to him afterwards. I said, does this mean that GOTV and field doesn't matter anymore? And I thought he'd have a great response that defended his entire profession. And he said, no. It doesn't matter anymore if you have a candidate who can actually energize a new segment of the electorate. What we're going to see is if in November it comes back to mattering again. Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party now have over 5,000 staffers spread out around the country, mostly in the battleground states, there to drag people to the polls. Donald Trump and the Republican Party have less than a third of that. So we're going to see whether that matters when we see whether these candidates underperform or overperform their polls. Second bit of conventional wisdom is we've always said that free media sometimes isn't worth the price. So free media is just getting on TV, getting on the news, getting on the radio where the news is covering you, rather than paid media where you're buying ads that are apparently even worse than prescription drug ads. Right? Free media was what fueled Donald Trump's primary campaign. Right? As long as they spelled his name right, he was happy to be on whichever TV program he wanted to. And nothing he said, as controversial as it was, nothing he said caused his support to go down. In fact, because he dominated the airwaves, he sucked all the oxygen out of that race. And the more than a dozen other candidates just couldn't get any airtime. So getting on TV, whether it was for good, whether it was because he said outlandish things or whether he had a good campaign event, that helped him throughout this campaign. But think about what the story has been like since the conventions. If you look at the ebbs and flows of each candidate's fortunes, if you've been on TV, it's because something's gone wrong in your campaign. Right? So the biggest thing with Donald Trump was the Access Hollywood tape, but also, when he attacked the Gold Stars parents, he's gone down in the polls. He's actually, the correlation between what he's doing in the polls and what kind of coverage he's got has been very tight. Hillary Clinton, when she's been on the news with her email scandals, that's been terrible for her. So this seems to be a normal trend in elections that's coming back after a time in the primary when it seemed to be suspended. Another thing we talk about in politics and worry a lot is the role of campaign finance, because we think that money matters in elections, right? This election this year, right, will be probably the second most expensive election in American history, and it'll be the election where money matters the least. Right? The candidates, this is early in the Republican campaign, and you see the amount of TV advertising in these circles, and you see Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, John Kasich. These were the people who all had the super PACs behind them. They had all the money in the presidential race. Their polling figures were pretty terrible. Donald Trump hardly spent anything on ads in the primary. He ran a shoestring campaign, and he has one of the poorest funded presidential campaigns this year, and yet he's running very strongly. So in some ways, this is a silver lining for political reformers. For the Bernie Sanders crowd who wants to overturn Citizens United, this should be a heartening tale of money not determining outcomes. Right? We've gotten so much free media, so much attention into this race that we've made up our minds not based on the attack ads, but based on what we think of those candidates. Will money matter for Hillary Clinton in the closing day of the campaign? She comes in with a big financial advantage, and maybe those ads will pay off, but maybe they won't. I'll tell you in a couple days. The last bit of conventional wisdom is a book that came out a few years ago saying the party decides, that endorsements by party leaders are really important, right? And even though many of us bring these endorsement books into the polling places with us, we've seen the limits of the power of endorsements, right? Until San Diego's own Duncan Hunter endorsed Donald Trump about halfway through the primary, no sitting member of Congress or the Senate had endorsed him. right? He was the outcast of the party establishment. And yet that helped him in this campaign. So we're seeing this overturning of conventional wisdom because we don't want to simply follow the endorsements of our party leaders anymore. This is the most anti-establishment, anti-authoritarian campaign that I've seen in my life. Now, there were a few bits of conventional wisdom that seemed to be right in the primary, but may be wrong in November. So one of the things when political scientists try to come up with statistical models to predict elections is there's this time for a change idea. That after 8 years, people are so tired of your party that they just want to give the other party the chance. So after 8 years of George W. Bush, America wanted to give the Democrats a chance, and that fueled the election of Barack Obama. Every model based on that would seem to point towards Hillary Clinton losing. And there are published political science models that do that and predict that she'll lose based on this reaction against them. In the primary, it seemed like people wanted a change. But as we become a little bit more risk averse, as we look at electing the next leader of the free world, the question is, will people come back to the status quo and keep the party in office? That's what Hillary Clinton hopes. Finally, does the economy matter, right? It's the economy, stupid was Bill Clinton's campaign was the slogan that his campaign consultants used to describe his campaign. It's still a top issue for most Americans. But even though the economy, based on economic models, we would predict that this is a toss-up election with an edge going to the Republicans, it looks like we have a solid lead for the Democrat going into this last election. So these things may be undone by this presidential election, and our normal political science statistical models may be wrong. All right. Finally, I want to share with you a little of the research that UCSD does to give you a flavor of the kind of work that some of the students who you work with get to be involved in, and professors are trying to do to change the way people think about studying politics. There have been a couple trends converging in this election. One is that this has been the Twitter election, right? That it used to be that you put out your press releases on Twitter and that they reflected the normal political rhetoric. But now Twitter is driving this news cycle, right? Donald Trump's tweets, but also Hillary Clinton's tweets, right, are directly communicating with voters. They're being covered on the nightly news. Social media is driving this election. And at the same time, computer scientists, many of them at UCSD, are getting better and better at using the tools. So this creates these giant data sets that you need to do something with. And then computer scientists are getting better and better at creating tools to actually decode them, to figure out how words are used in context with each other so that we can code hundreds of thousands of tweets. So with a grant from the chancellor, I've gotten together with a computer science professor, a sociologist, and someone who runs a big data company, and we've downloaded all the tweets of all 23 presidential candidates and all their super PACs throughout this campaign. And so we have this giant data set. And so that gives you hundreds of tweets per day. So this is how many tweets per day Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump have tweeted, right? And so we've heard more talk about Donald's tweets, but Hillary's actually been more active. And then the white lines that you can't really see here are the other candidates. So you've got more tweets than you can actually deal with. So you need to have computers help guide you and sort through these tweets. One way of doing that is looking at basic things like a word cloud to look at how candidates speak differently. So this is just something that tells you the bigger the word is, the more one candidate uses it versus the other. And so you just see a little bit about their rhetorical styles, right? Donald Trump's talking about making America great again, talking about things that are great, talking about the media, talking about things that are crooked, amazing, wow, nice, America. That's what he's talking about. Hillary Clinton's talking about women, families, fighting, guns, and so you see a difference in their rhetoric. But what does that tell you, right? You need to get more complicated concepts to really say something serious about what this tells us about American politics. And to do that, you can't just rely on computers. You need people. So what we've done to create this sort of virtual lab in political data analytics is we've employed, so this summer we had students from UCSD, a really ambitious Torrey Pines High School student, can't really see Kennedy Middleton, but that's Kennedy Middleton, who's from Spelman College, who's spending the summer working in our political science department. So we had this lab, and now we have 6 students right now who I was working with last night, and what they're doing is coding tweets by hand, reading tweets, talking about them, and putting them into categories, saying, what's the sentiment of this tweet? Does it have a positive tone, or does it have a negative tone? What's the content of this tweet? Is it talking about policy issues, or is it just talking about politics? What issues does it address? And is this fact, or is it opinion? Right? What we do with that is then we take those human codes of a couple thousand tweets, and we train computer algorithms to replicate them. So we have what humans do, and we use that to teach computers. And then we test it to see if then the computers can replicate how the humans have coded things. And once we do that, then we can turn our computer algorithms loose on all these hundreds of thousands of tweets and do things like try to pick what makes a tweet go viral. So this is a graph that shows you which tweet was the most viral tweet on any given day. Donald Trump wins most of the days, but Bernie Sanders did as well, Hillary Clinton a few times. And these tweets, some of them have tens and maybe even hundreds of thousands of retweets. So looking at what tweets go viral actually gives us a behavioral way to see what Americans want out of politics. What do we say we want out of politics? We want to hear politicians have positive messages and address the issues of the day. Right? That's our kind of Civics 101 idea about what we want to hear from our politicians. You hear folks say that a lot. What do you think we actually retweet? Positive messages or negative messages? Do we retweet policy tweets or personal and political messages? Absolutely. Right? So what we found from this project so far is we don't really want what we say we want about politics, from politics, right? We want negative messages about politics, right? So these are the candidates, these are the people who were brave enough to run for president, who started this process. And we churn them through a process where everyone who runs for office goes down among everyone, where we think everyone is corrupt or crazy even when we're going to vote for them, when we're polarized on every president no matter which party they're from and who they are, and really this is what we've turned. And if we ask how we got here, the answer is the process and us. And we shouldn't just blame these two people who put themselves forward running for president. All right, thanks very much. Are we doing any Q&A or not?
The next part of the program, we're going to introduce to you several of your team members, because we're going to be speaking about evaluation and assessment. And a number of our key members will be presenting to you some of their work, some of their thinking, and some of their product. But let me also begin by saying what that slide says. What is our true north? And our true north is defined by that one slide, which is our mission statement. Student Affairs supports the enrollment, academic success, and well-being of every student by developing their intellectual, social, and moral growth. That, I think, is what we're about. We are mission-driven. And I believe we generally are not about being involved with an organization that is asking what's the return on investment. We, I think, take an enormous amount of pride working at the University of California, San Diego, working for a university that contributes to society good, particularly compared with other organizations that will always ask what's the return on investment. We don't do that. We do it because we care about our students. We do it because of the welfare and the well-being of our students. I submit to you, this is our true north. So whenever we're working or making decisions, that should be the driving force, our true north. What is in the benefit and the well-being of our students. And so assessment and evaluation can be absolutely a pivotal event in keeping us focused, aligned, and creating momentum to achieve our vision. Next slide. Next slide. There you go. So without a strong sense of direction and focus and alignment, we may have some turbulence. We created this particular set of arrows because if the top one, if we have people working in different modalities on their own goals, what they on themselves or unit-based think this is the direction I want to go or my team wants to go, it creates some level of turbulence. It doesn't create alignment. We hope to work together and to create more cohesion. Coherence is the word, coherence, synergy, interdependency, and to constantly remain student focused. And I will emphasize one word. We're not seeking compliance with evaluation and assessment. Really what we're looking for is a sense of commitment, and I think you'll see our colleagues present to you a sense of commitment. We want members to bring their energy, passion, excitement to measuring our success. Notice I said our success, just not their success. If we have alignment, we're working together in the same direction, true north. So I submit to you, assessment and evaluation can be a vehicle to open up dialogue to help our teams stay focused on the mission, on the learning, and how we're achieving our mission. And let me also say to you, we don't collect data just for the exercise of creating a report. It has much more significant meaning, and it must be helping us achieve our mission. So I present to you now Dr. Marlene Lowe, who will then introduce to you 3 team members that'll be sitting at the table, and they will be presenting some of their concepts, some of their data, some of how they're working in alignment for the greater good. Dr. Lowe?
Thank you so very much. It's an honor and a pleasure to introduce to you our wonderful colleagues who are truly committed to our students and to the work that they do for student affairs. First is Chris Wong Davis, who is the Director of Admissions. Danica Garcia, who is the coordinator of the Math and Science Tutorial Program within OASIS. And Alex Kushner, the Director of University Events Office. This magnificent and generous group of colleagues was invited to be a part of this panel to highlight their terrific work in evaluation and assessment and to inspire you with their assessment and evaluation stories. They showcase a variety of approaches from goal setting and metrics to student performance tracking and using existing student survey data. Each panelist will share the results of their 2015-16 evaluation or assessment, and then if we have time, I will pose 1 or 2 questions to the group. We'll start with Chris.
Thank you, Marlene. All right, we'll get us started. Okay, that's a lot of text. So if you don't want to read it, don't worry about it. I'll walk you through it. So essentially, what I've got for you today is part of our goals and metrics for the unit of the Office of Admissions. And so what we do year to year, our goal is to bring in the incoming class of both freshmen and transfer students to the institution. Sounds pretty simplistic, but there's a lot of data behind that, and there are a lot of elements. Within that goal, we want to enroll a class that is diverse, that has geographic diversity, that has academic diversity. There are many, many layers of types of students that we're trying to bring in, and so we have a lot of work to do as we do that, and I'll walk you through that in a minute. How many of you really know what the Office of Admissions look like? Intimately familiar? A couple hands, okay. So I think we take it for granted that everyone knows what we do and what our office looks like. But for your purposes, to have some insight into what we do. We have multiple units within the Office of Admissions. We have an operations unit who really function as kind of the behind the scenes, the really down and dirty crew that happens to make things happen, helps us to get the applications downloaded from UCOP. They work behind the scenes. We have our recruitment and yield team, and our strategic initiatives that are very much the front-facing team. They're out in schools, our AOs. They're the ones who travel all the time. And we have our evaluations unit. Everybody really participates in our evaluations unit. It's what we do to assess and read student applications and evaluate transcripts. So there's a lot of heavy lifting in our office, and our staff does a lot of different things. So there are approximately 40 staff members in our office, about 90 students. We have the college ambassadors who give tours on campus. Those are part of our office. And roughly about 140 external readers who help us read applications. Without them, we wouldn't get through them all. But one of the pieces that often is overlooked is that our policy for admissions within the UC system is set by the Committee on Admissions, which is a faculty committee. So we meet with the faculty, they approve the policy. There is a UC-wide policy of faculty members who also approves UC-wide policy. So it's not that we just make it up as we go. We have authority that we work with who tells us how we shape the class and what policy we implement. So with that, let's talk a little bit about the data that we used in our 2015-2016 unit performance summary. And so what you see is the dissection of the URM portion of our applications. What we know is of interest to us is to increase the diversity on our campus of URMs. And so how we do that is to ensure that the students who we want to be able to admit are in the application pipeline. If they don't apply, we can't obviously offer them a seat at our institution. So it's very important to us that as the applications start coming in, and the application submission period just started on November 1 for this next year, we track and watch how many students are applying, where they're applying from, who they represent, even geography, based on geography, who they are, their academics that they're applying to. All those things are very important to us. But in this case, we were looking at URM applications because as a system, that is something that is very important to us as a campus, but also as a system to make sure that we're serving all the students of the state of California. And so last year, one of our goals was to ensure that more Native American students and African American students had applied so that we had the opportunity to review them and possibly admit them as students here. So we did manage to get our application totals up to about 26% of the application pool were URMs, and this is really looking at the freshman pool. So last year we had almost 85,000 freshman applications, and 26% of those were URMs. Our goal over the next few years is to get to 30% of our application pool. And every year the application pool continues to grow, so that's a challenge. As the pool gets larger and larger, that 30% represents a larger and larger number. So our work is cut out for us in how we get to students, work with high schools, counselors, community-based organizations to ensure that we're an option for their students. So we track very closely all of our application data to make sure we're doing what we need to do to be able to then admit the right class on the back end so that all the students you see on campus are the students that we want to see as a campus and educate here as an institution. So that's a really quick, in the nutshell, what we were doing over in the Office of Admissions last year. I'm going to hand the helm over to Danita.
Hi,
Hi, good morning, everyone. So I'm going to be talking about the early warning system, which is a service provided by the Math and Science Tutorial Program at OASIS. And so our goal with the early warning system is to support students who are at risk for dropping or failing their STEM courses by providing them with a resource to build the knowledge and skills necessary to succeed in those courses and at the university. In so doing this, we also hope to contribute to their decreased time to degree and also increase student retention. The structure of the program relies on identifying students who have scored in the bottom 20% on their first midterm. Those students are identified by their course instructors. Their course instructors then invite them to participate in an OASIS study group for that course. So far, the program has worked mainly with the Chemistry 6 series professors and students, and so I'll be referring to them, but that communication and collaboration with those chemistry faculty has been crucial to the success of the program. Once those students are identified, we form study groups for those students, and we assign a tutor to those students as well, to those study groups. And those groups then meet twice weekly for the remainder of the quarter. And really, the program design is based on the idea that students are really more likely to persist in their courses and at the university if they feel that they're valued by members of the campus community, so members including their course instructors, OASIS, and also their peers who provide the direct tutoring support to them. And the study groups are very student-centered. They focus on developing content knowledge as well as transferable skills that they can then use throughout the rest of their courses and their careers here at UCSD. Okay, so this slide shows the data that was collected for the Chemistry 6 series, so Chem 6A, 6B, and 6C courses over the 2015-2016 academic year. And as you can see from the two tables to the left, we were looking at eligible students. So those eligible students are those who are identified by their course instructors who have scored in the bottom 20% of their courses on the first midterm. And 87% of those students who then chose to participate in an OASIS study group for their chemistry course passed their course. Compared to 58% of those students who were eligible to participate in a study group but chose not to. So we are seeing higher pass rates for students who do participate in an OASIS study group. The graph shows us the percentage of letter grades for both participants and eligible non-participants for the last academic year. And as you can see, the DFW rates are higher for those students who did not participate, were eligible but did not participate in a study group, compared to those students who did participate. Furthermore, when broken down by course and quarter, all pass rates for students receiving A, B, and C and pass grades are higher for program participants compared to those eligible students who did not participate in a study group. So based on this data, we do conclude that the early warning system is likely having a positive impact on students who participate in the program, contributing to their persistence in the course and also to their passing grades. We also administer an evaluation to students near the end of the quarter where they can answer survey questions based on their experience in their study group, and their comments do point to the fact that they find the collaborative peer nature of the study groups, the student-centered design of the study group to be beneficial, and this supports the idea that learning is a social process and that having that peer collaboration is important. Of course, other factors can and do contribute to a student's persistence and performance in their course besides just participating in a study group and the intervention of the early warning system. However, research does show that an intervention by campus community members can have a positive impact on student success. And of course, these students who do participate in a study group are dedicating 3 additional hours per week of study time to this course, and they do have that tutor as a resource as well as their peers in the group. Looking forward in the towards future years of the early warning system, we definitely want to focus on continued faculty outreach and communication. This is crucial to the success of this program and to the ongoing longevity of the program. Over the past 3 years, the program has grown quite rapidly. We started with working with one Chemistry 6A course and one professor, and we've now expanded to Chem 6A, B, C, and working with over 10 professors. We're also expanding to other subject areas so that faculty outreach and communication, letting faculty know what the program is and how it can potentially impact their students is really important for the longevity and the impact of this program. We also want to continue to assess the program and look for more meaningful assessment methods, both quantitatively and qualitatively. It's difficult to correlate directly the impact of the early warning system with students' improved grades, but we want to look for ways to continue to assess that. And one thing that I think is very feasible is including more participant feedback, following up with students who have participated in the program to assess the impact they perceive that the program has had on them. Thank you very much, and I will pass it on to our last presenter.
All right, well, hi, everybody. Thank you. So, as Marlene mentioned, I'm Alex Kushner. I'm the director of the University Events Office. And at the University Events Office, in addition to our true north, our mission is to enhance campus life through artistic, social, cultural programs and events. We do that by supporting and assisting campus departments and organizations in executing student-facing programs. Examples of that include our Triton Fest late night and weekend event series, the AS Concerts and Events programs, which you may have heard of, Hullabaloo, Bear Gardens, the Sun God Festival. Am I allowed to say that out loud in this room? All other events we support are the SD Hacks Hackathon, which takes place this year at REMAC Arena, and the new Student Welcome Convocation, which is a beautiful tradition that the university produces each year for our new first year and transfer students. So why did they ask a behind-the-scenes guy to come out and talk to you all today? Well, I'm here to make a strong pitch for the Student Satisfaction Survey. Let me be the first to say, assessment comes with a steep learning curve for folks like me, and I'm sure some of you as well. And the beauty of it is, and what I'm here to tell you about, is someone has already done the hard work for us, and it's just a matter of using the data they've collected to serve your program. So what is the Student Satisfaction Survey? I cannot take credit for it, but I'm here to talk about it. It is issued by the Organizational Performance Assessments area of the Office of Operational Strategic Initiatives. There are probably 12 acronyms within that sentence. 2016 was actually the 22nd year that this survey was issued, and I will sheepishly admit that it was also the first year that the University Events Office participated. The survey is comprised of 10 to 12 questions, 2 to 3 of which are actually designed by the individual units that participate in the survey, and they cover a broad number of topics. So for the University Events Office, that included understanding of student needs, boop, accessibility, responsiveness to requests and problems. It included problem-solving, knowledge, courteousness, website effectiveness, and movement in a positive direction to meet the needs of our students. So, why was this useful to us? Well, 32,452 students, including undergraduate, graduate, and medical students, were surveyed during the period of January 11th to March 11th, 2016. The survey had a 20% response rate with over 6,417 students responding. And the key takeaway is, in case I start losing anybody, is work smarter, not harder. The work was done for us. We just had to analyze it and make some decisions about where to move forward. So, moving on. What did we learn, and what are we doing with it? So the overall satisfaction with the University Events Office proves to be quite high. 64% of respondents not only are satisfied with our department, they're actually extremely or very satisfied with our department, if I do say so myself. UEO received high ratings throughout the survey, averaging 3.92 out of a 5 in each category. Our strengths were identified as courteousness, thank you, and knowledge. Where we can improve the most, however, and what we're most interested in addressing, are accessibility and the effectiveness of our website. So, and just to sort of summarize it, our favorite comment from students in the open-ended section, and the one that really hits home for us, is that we apparently do a great job at coming up with new events and telling students about them. I like hearing all the fun and exciting things going on campus. So if for no other reason than to hear what you're doing right, I highly recommend that you use the Student Satisfaction Survey. But that having been said, it's not just about what we learned, it's about what we do with it. So the impacts for UEO are addressing our areas for improvement. So in the area of accessibility, we've added an additional full-time staff member to our team. Somewhere in the back of the room is Ace Antonio. I'm now calling you out so everyone can say welcome. And it's our hope that this additional full-time staff member will help us become more accessible and reduce some of the workload constraints that were making it difficult for us to provide the level of service that we wanted to at all times. Additionally, website effectiveness. So our website needs some work, and we're the first to admit it. So we're embarking on a rebranding campaign that will include new branding that will help us be more easily identified, as well as a more effective website that makes resources available to our staff, colleagues, and students at all times without needing to contact one of us directly to get the initial answers. And the last takeaway from this survey, and the point I'll hit home, is that the big data that we generate through these large surveys that are organized for us allows us to identify smaller areas to drill down to in future assessments so that we continue to improve our programs and better serve our clients, who are departments and students, and more than that, so that we can generate more fun on campus. So thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you all very much for sharing your results from the 2015-16 reports. One of the questions that always comes up to my mind, in addition to what did you do with your data, which we have some wonderful ideas of what's happening with the data, is what did you learn and what advice would you give your colleagues? So I know that this is a question that many of us have, and I'd like to pose to our panel. What advice, if anyone out there wanted to do something similar, would you give to them?
I can start. I think for us, it was important to start small. The program began with a pilot, and that really laid a strong foundation for how the program would continue and be able to expand. And I think that's been, now that it is a larger program and involving more management, it has been nice to have that strong foundation laid. I think focusing on how you will collect data, not only what kind of data, but also how you will collect it is important for us. Tracking students and just managing that whole process of data collection has been really critical, and so to kind of lay the foundation for that has been really, really important.
I would say from a perspective where we have data at our hands, sometimes it's easy to overlook, like either the student satisfaction or some of the application data, that you have a lot of data on your hands and it's a matter of analyzing and looking deeper and asking really good questions of your data to get some answers, and or asking what pieces of data don't you have that then you should be looking for in the future to better inform your processes.
And I would just add that, in sort of reiterating what I just said, you don't always have to do the work yourself. Our colleagues are doing a lot of great assessment projects that we can all benefit from. And so think about how we can use the existing assessment projects to benefit the work we do and avoid duplicating work and fatiguing our students with more surveys than are necessary when the questions are already being asked for us.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Chris, Danica, and Alex. I really appreciate your willingness to come up here and share your stories. They're marvelous. We in Student Affairs do marvelous work, and one way to let our light shine is through assessment and evaluation. It's my hope that we have inspired you to dialogue with each other about the possible ways that we can use assessment and evaluation to tell our stories. Thank you.
We're almost done. I want to also thank Chris, Danica, Alex, you guys were awesome. Marlene, thank you for putting that together. What you just saw demonstrated are individuals that are dedicated, are willing to take a risk, are willing to say, this is my data and this is what I'm learning about it. This is the data that I have, and this is how I'm using to improve our program, our services. Again, data isn't written and prepared simply for report writing. Data should be looked upon about how do we improve our programs and services. So I'm very, very grateful to that. I'm now at the point where I should be wrapping up. I need to give thanks to the athletic department for the towels, the little handout on the table. They were the greeters. They decided they wanted to help us greet people and welcome you this morning. They did a fabulous job. How about giving them a round of applause? Yeah. Dr. Kauser and others will be hosting an election party tonight. If you'd like to come, please do so. I know there's a lot of people that live and breathe political science, the art of studying an election. Thad does a fabulous job of being excited about it. This is his profession, this is his field. Lastly, I'll end with giving special thanks to all of you. We wish we could have spent more time highlighting many of our units, speaking about our great successes. We began this year with a phenomenal success year. For me, it's unbelievable that we're entering our 7th week. Is it 7th week? 7th week of the quarter. I don't know how that happened. I remember believing it was August and I needed to start preparing for the start of the quarter. Now I'm already preparing for the end of the quarter. Let me also wish you a fabulous Thanksgiving. That's only just a few days away. I hope that when you travel or your family travels, that they remain safe and sound. Most of all, I hope you have a wonderful, joyous event with your family and friends. Thanksgiving is a day where we can just take a deep breath and be thankful for what we have. I have so much to be thankful for. Certainly, the opportunity to stand here in front of you, to represent you, to be the Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs. Lastly, I'll wrap up with where I started. Monica, let's give Monica one more round of applause. I know you'll agree with me. You will remember this day because someday she'll be renowned and famous, and we have the pleasure of getting to know her in this very small and humble place. Did I say humble? That's where I want to end. Humble and kind. I hope we walk out and live through those words. I hope our nation does too. I hope our candidates do too. I wish you a very humble and kind day. Go out and be well. Thank you very much.